All right, let's do a deep dive into all things pro wrestling. We've got some crazy stuff happening in WWE, AEW, TNA, and NXT. And we've got to try and predict where all these storylines are headed, right?
Definitely. A lot of twists and turns happening.
Yeah, you know it. And honestly, where better to start than with, well, the return of CM Punk at Survivor Series.
Oh,
Seriously, what a moment. I mean, we both know he's not back just for a little nostalgia tour, especially now that Seth Rollins is stepping up as his rival.
Exactly. I mean, this isn't just some random matchup that they threw together. This goes deep. This brings up, like, all that unfinished business stuff, which, that's always a powerful storyline in wrestling.
Oh, totally.
I mean, Punk wants to prove he can still hang with the best. And Rollins, he's the perfect guy for that, especially with all this talk about how he regrets not attacking Punk back in the day.
Yeah, it's definitely adding another layer of intensity to this whole thing. I'm already hooked, I have to say. It makes you wonder, though, what's the bigger picture? Like, are we looking at a slow burn to WrestleMania here?
I mean, it definitely has Road to WrestleMania written all over it. But think about it. Haven't you been following Punk since, way back in his Ring of Honor days?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So this whole return and now this feud with Rollins, it's like WWE is hitting all your nostalgia buttons at once.
Yeah.
It's pretty clever when you think about it.
Okay, you're right. That's pretty brilliant. But let's switch gears here. Let's talk about another storyline with a lot of emotion. The New Day anniversary, Big E's return, that was heartwarming to see. But the tension between him and Kofi and Xavier, man, you could cut it with a knife.
Oh, yeah. When Kofi and Xavier basically accused Big E of abandoning the team, that was some seriously raw emotion right there. You could feel the weight of all their history,
Yeah, it was almost like painful to watch at times.
Yeah.
Honestly, do you think this is the beginning of the end for the New Day? Or can they actually come back from this?
It's tough to say. They've been through so much together, but this feels different. This isn't just some storyline. It feels real. I mean, the real question is, can they actually channel all this into something interesting? Or will it just tear them apart for good?
Man. All right, let's lighten things up a bit. Let's head over to AEW, the Continental Classic. Things are really heating up. In your notes, you mentioned Shelton Benjamin versus Kyle Fletcher. What a match.
Oh, absolutely. That was technical wrestling at its finest. Although I have to say, that finish, with Fletcher winning thanks to Don Callis interfering, that left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths.
Hold on, though. I get why Fletcher winning is a big deal, but is he really a top contender? I mean, we both saw Eddie Kingston last week.
You've got a point. Kingston is a force of nature. Don't forget about Bryan Danielson. When it comes to technical skill, he's in a league of his own. Fletcher's going to have his work cut out for him if he wants to stay on top of the Blue League.
No doubt. Speaking of competition and AEW, we got to talk about MJF and Adam Cole. The betrayals, the mind games, that promo from MJF, pure gold.
That promo, it was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. Seriously, MJF knows exactly how to get under Cole's skin, and he's playing it to perfection.
Yeah, but do you think this feud really has what it takes to actually change AEW's main event scene?
Well, with all their history and the whole better than you, baby stuff.
Yeah.
And, the current championship situation. Yeah, I'd say there's a really good chance it could shake things up at the top. Think about it. MJF is already a very compelling champion, but Cole coming after him, it adds all this complexity and history that's really hard to ignore.
You're right. The potential is definitely there. Now, speaking of legends, let's talk about TNA for a second. This whole 23 thing with PCO and Sami Callihan, in your article you called it cryptic, and I have to agree. What do you make of it?
It's definitely intriguing. TNA is great at weaving these mysteries into their storylines. I mean, PCO coming back from the dead, aligning himself with Callahan. It's also weird and captivating. I think this could be something really special.
Okay, I'm hooked. We can't forget about Kushida's big win at Turning Point either. He's earned a shot at Moose's X Division title at Final Resolution.
Yeah, Kushida's just a phenomenal technical wrestler. And that win wasn't just luck, it was calculated. It sets the stage for an epic showdown with Moose.
And then there was that crazy Hardys versus the System match.
That was a wild ride. I mean, this rivalry is far from over, especially with that tables match coming up at Final Resolution. Yeah. And we all know how brutal those tables matches can get.
All right, let's head over to NXT. The Iron Survivor Challenge matches. They really delivered. Obafemi, his performance was seriously impressive.
Oh, yeah. Dominant doesn't even begin to describe it. That double choke slam. Whoa! Now everyone wants to know what this means for Trick Williams. This is classic wrestling storytelling. You've got the up-and-comer trying to prove himself against the champ.
Speaking of up-and-comers, the Women's Iron Survivor Challenge really gave us some new contenders for Roxanne Perez's title. Stephanie Walker and Sol Ruca especially. What do you think?
Both of them had some great moments, showing off their athleticism and how well they know the ring. They're definitely ones to watch, you know? It makes the women's division that much more exciting, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And that's really just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to get into.
Yeah, it's a wild time in wrestling right now.
Yeah.
You know, speaking of wild, you mentioned the bloodline in your notes, and I gotta say, their storyline always keeps me on the edge of my seat.
Oh, for sure. Survivor Series really threw a wrench into things, though, didn't it? Rollins getting involved, Jenny attacking Sammy. I mean, the power dynamic in that group is constantly shifting.
Yeah, and the big question is, who's going to challenge Roman Reigns next? Could it be Sammy, finally breaking free from the bloodline?
Or maybe Cody Rhodes coming back for revenge.
Or don't forget about a possible Randy Orton return. Can you imagine that pop?
Oh, man, the place would go nuts.
It's amazing how WWE keeps us guessing like this. Their long-term storytelling is just, it's one of their biggest strengths, really. And speaking of compelling storylines, Judgment Day. They're another faction to watch, aren't they? Finn Balor demanding a title shot after taking out Gunther. That's a bold move.
Yeah, but is it a smart move? I mean, Gunther, he's a beast.
True, but it adds another layer of unpredictability to Judgment Day's story, doesn't it? And with Rhea Ripley in the mix, their potential for just, like, wreaking havoc is huge.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Speaking of wreaking havoc, let's jump over to AEW and talk about Mercedes Moné for a second. She's been dominating the women's division as the TBS champion.
Yeah, and her feud with Anna Jay, that's just getting started. It has the potential to be explosive. You've been following Moné since the early days, right? This must be pretty exciting for you.
Oh, absolutely. To see her come into AEW and make such an impact, it's incredible. And it's not just her either. There are other rising stars in the women's division making waves too. You mentioned Julia Hart and Chris Statlander in your notes.
Both incredibly talented and both hungry to prove themselves. They bring something fresh and exciting to the division, that's for sure. Their matches are always a must-see.
Now, while we're talking AEW, we can't forget about Winter's coming. Kyle O'Reilly versus Adam Cole. Talk about a dream match.
It's going to be a clash of the titans, that's for sure. And with a shot at MJF on the line, the stakes couldn't be higher.
And then there's Swerve Strickland. His feud with Max Caster is getting pretty heated. I have a feeling he's about to shake things up in a major way.
Oh yeah, Swerve is unpredictable, which makes him dangerous to everyone. He's the kind of guy who can just seize an opportunity and, you know, make the most of it. Don't underestimate him.
Speaking of unpredictable, back in TNA, that whole 23 mystery with PCO and Sami Callihan, it's still driving everyone crazy.
I love that TNA does this. They weave these little mysteries into their storylines, keep us guessing and coming up with theories. It's really engaging.
All right, let's have some fun here. Let's speculate a little. If you had to pick just one wrestler across all promotions who you think is going to have the biggest impact in the next year, who would it be?
Wow, that's a tough one. There's so much talent out there right now. But if I had to choose, I'd say keep your eye on Trick Williams in NXT.
Really? Why Trick?
Well, his journey as a top face, it's just beginning. He's got the charisma, he's got the athleticism, and he's connecting with the audience in a big way. I really think he has what it takes to be a major star.
Okay, you've got me intrigued, but don't forget about all those veterans out there looking for redemption.
Oh, of course. And that's what makes this era in wrestling so exciting. You've got the veterans with something to prove, rising stars hungry for their moment, and the champions fighting to hold on to their legacies.
It's like a melting pot of ambition and talent all bubbling over, and it's playing out across multiple promotions, each with its own unique flavor. Speaking of unique, what about that Julia Hart versus Jamie Hayter rivalry brewing in NXT? You had that in your notes.
Ah, yes. That's one I'm really excited about. Their styles just, they clash in such a compelling way. You know, it's like a clash of personalities, A&D in-ring styles, all wrapped into one. It's guaranteed to deliver. And I think it has the potential to really redefine what the NXT women's division is all about.
Yeah, I can already picture their matches. Intense, hard-hitting, full of drama.
Yeah, it really does feel like we're seeing this, like, renaissance of wrestling. You know, all these different styles, all these different personalities, all coming together.
And it's not just about the styles either, right? It's about wrestlers breaking the mold. Like we see it in the Bloodline, Judgment Day, even in AEW with guys like Swerve. They're all forging their own paths.
Yeah, definitely. They're not just following some pre-written script. They're actually writing their own stories. And that's what makes it so fun to watch.
Speaking of fun to watch, we've got some big events coming up. In your notes, you specifically mentioned TNA's final resolution.
Oh, yeah.
Nick Nemeth defending the TNA World Championship against AJ Francis. That's going to be intense.
Yeah, Nemeth has been a really dominant champion. But Francis, I mean, he's a powerhouse. Their styles are so different, too. It'll be really interesting to see who can, like, impose their will on the other.
And we can't forget about all the other matches happening at Final Resolution either, right? Masha Slamovich defending her title, the X Division title match. TNA always packs their events with action.
Oh, for sure. And the X Division, it's always such a great reminder that wrestling can be innovative and exciting, you know? High-flying, unpredictable, those matches always deliver.
Okay, so before we wrap up this deep dive, I have to ask, based on everything we've talked about, what are you most excited to see unfold in the coming year?
Honestly, it's the potential for change. Like, will CM Punk's return actually reshape WWE's landscape? Can the New Day put the pieces back together? Who's going to step up and challenge MJF and AEW? So many questions.
So many questions, so many possibilities. It's a great time to be a wrestling fan, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And remember, this is just the beginning, you know? There can be surprises, twists, turns, things we haven't even thought of yet. That's the beauty of wrestling. It's a story that's constantly evolving.
Well said. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the world of pro wrestling. And to everyone listening, keep your eyes peeled because things are about to get wild.